I have a Japanese friend, Ayako, who once told me that Japanese people and American people think about food differently. When Americans drive on a highway and see cows, we don't think, that looks like a tasty burger. But Japanese people might go into an aquarium and think, that looks delicious. This is representative of a greater difference between Oriental and Occidental ideas about food, especially food preparation. And where better to study the different cultures around food than foodie movies? What exactly is a foodie movie? I'm going to call a foodie movie any movie where at least one of the major themes, if not the major theme, is food. What separates a foodie movie from simply a movie with food is the way that food is treated. Food should be the focal point of a scene, rather than simply a prop. This leads us to food porn, the loving and impossibly sensual shots of food that make our mouths water. Food porn can be anything from a close-up of gooey cheese to butter melting in a pan to a cut of fall-off-the-bone tender meat. The term food porn is no coincidence either. Both Western and Eastern cultures often equate food and sex. For example, Taiwanese director Ang Lee's Eat, Drink, Man, Woman revolves around food and sex as mankind's two carnal desires.
饮食男女，人之大欲，不想也难。哎，忙活一辈子就为这个，想了气人呐！好滋味，谁尝过了？
More explicitly, Japanese director Junzo Itami's Tampopo mixes the gastronomic with the erotic, in a graphic sex scene involving an egg, and more subtly again in an innuendo-laced exchange between a gangster and an oyster diver. Notably, all of the sexual metaphors in Itami's work revolve around the female orgasm. On the other hand, mainstream American film uses food as foreplay rather than as a metaphor for sex itself. A man presents his lover with food, usually as a form of seduction, and her groans of ecstasy are foreshadowing of what is soon to follow. The way that she eats the food is also often suggestive, but is meant to appeal more to the male gaze. In both East and West, the cooking world tends to be male-dominated, so these cooking scenes provide insight into a non-traditional masculinity. For example, in Chef, the rather homely main character has both a gorgeous ex-wife and current girlfriend. While this might simply be a reflection of Hollywood's double standards, it more likely suggests that his talents with cooking are considered equally attractive as conventional looks, creating an alternative route to masculinity. Preparing food is not only about feeding and taking care of a partner, but it's a chance to show off skills, often dangerous skills like blade work. And what would a foodie movie be without knife work montages? These shots are intended to make viewers appreciate a chef's skill, and the danger involved adds excitement to a scene. Food preparation is elevated from a process, merely cutting meat, to a performance. Close-ups on high skill level techniques, whether that's a perfectly cooked steak, some tricky knife work, or an expertly prepared pie crust, all provide information about the character cooking. In both realms of cinema, early scenes of poor knife skills communicate a low level of expertise, later to be contrasted with a shot of the same chef expertly slicing and dicing. Taste is hard to visually communicate, so technique becomes a form of cinematic shorthand for character growth. The food in these shots is meant to be appreciated, just like in food porn, but the focus is on demonstrating the skill behind the finished product, more than the final product itself. Preparation scenes create action and inform the audience about character, while food porn serves to titillate, sometimes in all senses of the word. While advanced knife skills are a universal metric for a chef's talents, Asian and American audiences highlight different skill sets. American films often focus on patisserie and delicately, precisely baked goods. Audiences are treated to butter melting in pans and perfectly browned bread. A well-trained chef is in control, with no boilovers, and flare-ups are limited to the occasional blowtorch creme brulee. Asian cooking, with so many stir-fried dishes, takes a more dynamic approach. Flames are always shown, sometimes even added in with CGI, and cooking is a dangerous, heat-filled event. Measuring spoons and timers are completely missing from the scene. This comes down to a possible difference in end goal: presentation versus consumption.
他们餐厅吃东西一样，冷冰冰，好看不好吃。
For the American audience, dishes are exquisitely plated, meant to simultaneously impress while making our mouths water. There is a wider range in the Asian approach. Japanese culinary culture tends to also emphasize presentation, but Chinese depiction of food includes both decorative elements and dishes that are nothing more than the pot's contents poured onto a plate. The uniting element in Asian cuisine is attention to temperature. Unless it's an intentionally chilled dish, Asian dishes are ideally plated still steaming hot. Instead of a pretty garnish, steam and flames clue audiences in that the dish is piping hot and delicious. Here, Asian filmmakers take full advantage of the audiovisual medium in a way that Hollywood has not. The American emphasis on plating is static and brings nothing new to food appreciation, whereas the inclusion of sizzling sounds and wafting steam take the food movie experience outside the bounds of a still image. But what explains a stomach rumbling in the aquarium? After studying food preparation scenes, one particularly striking difference stands out: raw materials. American movies rarely deal with whole animals and tend to avoid showing anything Western audience might deem graphic. When intact or live animals are shown, it's with the point of shocking the audience.
Oh God.
Or to make a joke. On the other hand, Asian cinema is rife with shots of animals being butchered. These scenes are meant to be as tantalizing as a shot of just picked produce. They demonstrate the peak freshness of ingredients. Western audiences prefer bloodless manipulations of semi-prepared food, like a steak, whereas Eastern audiences seem to prefer to see the process from the very beginning. This might well have to do with the modern food culture at large. Most Americans purchase food in a moderately pre-prepared state from grocery stores, whereas the average Taiwanese person more often buys directly from the producer at local farmers markets. I remember during my first week in Taiwan, I was shocked that food at markets was usually sold whole, from chickens butterflied on ice, to entire pig legs on display, to styrofoam boxes of still spitting oysters. Additionally, Asian culture fosters a vibrant food market scene, featuring open kitchens where customers frequently see and want to see every stage of food preparation. Proximity to the source of food is closely related to appreciation for freshness and the animal as a whole. Taiwan and China, two countries where much of the country remains agrarian or has agrarian roots, emphasize the entire food process more than, say, Japanese movies, which appear more and more Western as the movie-going crowd buys more and more of their food from supermarkets rather than farmers markets. As a result, modern Japanese films focus more on already cut, prepared foods, or on pastries, just as we see in American movies. The main exception, of course, is sushi. Eaten raw and defined by freshness, there is no separating sushi from the fish it came from. So, while Japanese youth might not have personal experience butchering chickens, they will probably always drool a little at the aquarium. There's no one way to make a foodie movie. Just like aesthetic preference is culturally taught, so is taste. Two countries can depict the exact same dish in wildly different ways. And while there is no single best way to present food, I think Hollywood has a little way to go before it catches up with its Asian counterparts. Being an audiovisual medium, producers should strive to create a more immersive experience than what you see in a magazine. This means taking full advantage of audio, as well as including heat indicators like smoke and steam, which are hard to capture in a single photograph. Hollywood may already be catching on. The most iconic scenes and acclaimed food movies in American cinema all take elements found throughout the most famous Asian movies, Chef, for example, breaks the mold by showing audiences the butchering process for an entire pig. Ratatouille...
How do you tell a good bread is without tasting it? Not the smell, not the look, but the sound, the crust. Listen. Oh, a symphony of crackle. Only great breads.
Ratatouille showed us the extent to which sound effects heighten our experience. Netflix's original Okja, with famous Korean director Bong Joon-ho, goes so far as to take American audiences inside the slaughterhouse. The cult around food has existed for centuries and won't be disappearing anytime soon. So the future of cinema, here at home and abroad, looks delicious.